Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's well today. My name is John McDermott. Welcome back to webinar 2 of the series, Delivery of Services to American Indians and Alaskan Natives with Disabilities. I have to my right Suzanne Malson. She's going to sort of lead the webinar from here. I just want to remind people that this is a listen-only webinar, and you'll be able to ask questions via the chat area. The second in the series of webinars is a community of practice. So we've taken some of your comments and questions from the first webinar, and we're going to address them in sort of a conversational mode through this webinar. So thank you very much for participating. If at any time you want to ask a question, put it into the chat area, and maybe this time we can explore asking them in line with the content. So if you're addressing something and if I see a question, I can sort of move it towards Suzanne. Lee is going to be a little late today, but he's going to walk in the room a little bit later, and he'll be sitting in this chair. And we'll kind of go from there. So how are you today, Suzanne?
I'm good, John. And you?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I'm doing good. I'm excited. I want to say thank you to everyone for participating. I'm always excited to put on these webinars, and hopefully we can move forward with some information and share with everyone. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for that warm welcome and introduction, John. That's great. And I would like to say good morning to everyone, and my thank you for everyone for your participation. I'd like to thank the team here, John and Dana and Daryl and Georgianne and all the rest of the team here we have here. Who do we have here today?
There's Alana
and Shannon.
New to the team.
And, oh, hi, Shannon.
Vivi will be right back.
Vivi will be right back. And Jaslyn. So we have a full house here today. Well, let us begin. Some of the questions that were asked, well, most of them required research. We went to the 361 regulations and we're doing a lot of research so that we could provide you really accurate answers. But to provide you specific answers and accurate answers, we have to, we're required to go through RSA. And the reasoning behind that is that the WIOA regulations is requiring that RSA is the only entity that can interpret the regulations and any laws or any legal issues. But we certainly can address those things that I was able to find and that Lee and that Daryl were able to find. So the first one I'd like to focus on is Donna Thomas's question about, are we still allowed to count homemaker services? I would like to put it out into the audience as well. Do any of you have any comments to make on that question while I provide a little information? It would be helpful if we hear from other directors or VR counselors or administrative assistants that are in the chat box there, and that if you have anything that you'd like to share, we'd sure love to hear it. Any ideas or anything that you're doing, any best practices, because that's what this is about. So I'm going to try and move slowly through the answers so that we can have some chatting. The ideal thing is that most states have what they call a displaced homemaker program, and it's funded through the state to address training and education. The program is administered by the Agency for Workforce Innovation and partner with other agencies such as the State Workforce Development System. Something really important to understand is that there are, in the 361, there are multiple descriptions. So when you are exploring different options and training. And if an individual is looking for something specific, the recommendation is to go to the 361 and see if they have something already set up. Also, it would be really extremely wise if you partnered with your workforce investment team in your area, in your state. But some of the examples of some of the homemaker services would be like short-term child assistance specific, and then they give you the CFR numbers, and condition to participate in a hospice situation, or something like a single parents, displaced homemaker, and single pregnant women program. So, excuse me. So those are, there is a wealth of information out there regarding a homemaker. And again, we also have our project officers, August Martin and Sonia Turner, and we have RSA that we can turn to for more detail. We will continue to do the research on this and provide you more information. We will be doing a follow-up on Friday, and we might have even more information for you. Has anybody provided any comments in the chat box, John?
Come to the microphone.
Yes.
We have a couple of comments. We moved the microphone closer, so hopefully the volume works for you, Jeremiah. Lena is saying that she's a new counselor on the team, so she's looking forward to learning new things every day.
Welcome.
And then Donna Thomas says, how about homemaker as a 26 employment status for our annual report?
I'm writing that down, or actually it's being recorded. So let me see if I understand the, as a 26 status for your annual report. Donna, your question is valid, important, and extremely vital to the homemaker process. That is another question that will have to be examined, and we'll need guidance from RSA on, since they are the ones saying that they must be providing this kind of information. So bear with us. I appreciate the question, and we will not leave it unanswered. We will keep returning to the question and the expanded question until we resolve it for you and for all of us. Are there any more questions about the homemaker, or any other questions? We don't have to jump in any particular hoops. Okay, so the other questions that were posed was Mark's question about eligibility determination and extensions if eligibility cannot be determined within the 60 days. And as we said on Monday, the designated tribal unit must determine whether an individual is eligible for vocational rehabilitation services within a reasonable period of time and not to exceed 60 days. And this is a requirement unless exceptional and unforeseen circumstances beyond control of the designated tribal unit precludes making an eligible determination within 60 days. So, and the participant must agree with that. And what happens is that you determine a particular time frame in order to you write out a plan. It must be a case note, and you must agree on the time. You say, well, we'll be able to gather all of the information from the health resources we've been told within the next 10 days. So allowing yourself maybe the next 15 days to come together and hopefully that you would have all the paperwork that you needed to be able to say that an individual is eligible for the program. Their section 34, the CFR section 361.42 addresses this particular topic in detail, and it is always with we're always looking at the idea that it's something outside of the VR counselor's control or the AIVRS program's control that is delaying the process. And once you accept that as a given, then you work with all of the other agencies that would be providing you the documentation in a timely manner. We are looking to figure out how we can, once we have some of these, we have these documented, we have the sites where we found the information. The next discussion would be, how do we post it? How do we get it to you so that you can review it for yourself and then to be able to come back with some more questions? Do remember that RSA is a really a huge partner in this. We had some, I'm going to leave that there for now, and I'd like to hear back from some folks about what you're doing out there in terms of your 60-day. Have you had any challenges? Do you have best practices? What's going on, John?
We have one person typing.
Okay.
A couple people.
So we're going to wait for them. And it's not hot here today.
Let's see, we have Donna saying, currently we can usually get our applicants eligible. It's the Social Security beneficiaries that we have trouble getting records for correct placement. It goes way beyond 60 days most of the time.
Right.
And then Shelley says, unless you want to address that one first.
I do. I'd like to say, what is the estimated time that you, given your situation, do you have an estimated time that you're able to tell your potential consumer or your applicant, Donna?
This might be relevant, but Shelley says, we explain to our consumers it can take 60 days, but they can speed up the process by getting the documentation themselves. This
is true. And the only challenge with that is that it does place a burden on the applicant. And maybe then there is a lot of back and forth with gathering the correct information. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding between what is actually needed in terms of the documentation. I'm sure many of you have received pages and pages and pages of history, health history, that's not relevant to the issues that you are looking for in terms of to define what is the impairment that is creating the disability for a particular individual. There are other ways of sometimes we actually have to put something in an envelope and hand carry it to the health department, IHS, the health department, in order to make sure that we're actually getting the papers out there.
Donna Thomas says, we tell them that in order to do the correct VR services, we must know the extent and limitations of their disability. We do not want to hurt them. We want to help them get gainful employment where their disability is not going to stop them from their wanted employment goal.
Very good. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you, Donna. And are there any other best practices out there that folk are experiencing and can share? And I don't want to discount sending an applicant with the request for gaining the health records, because we have to do that sometimes. But that's when we might need to talk to it at an administrative level to look at how can we, as a team, as a tribal entities and tribal programs, as a team, how can we better serve our population by moving paperwork along. Sometimes it might mean a development of new forms. Sitting down with those folks that are receiving it, behavioral health or IHS, and saying, okay, what exactly do you need on your form? And then the procedure then starts to move more rapidly, because then they're not having to guess where things are. It will always be in the same place. Everybody's doing the same thing. And that's when the services start to, that's when the application process is moved along more swiftly.
Donna commented earlier in the thread, she said you started this question on Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and then she followed up with some of the newer counselors thought they could find them eligible without Social Security records.
And what are we talking about Social Security, or?
I think she was saying you started this question on Monday, talking about the earlier question that you were just addressing. So I just wanted to complete her thread.
Okay.
And then she's typing right now, so we can try to figure out where in the answering of questions we are.
Yes. We did miss someone directly after Donna when I was waiting for Donna to type the estimate. So there was.
The newer counselors mentioned that they were automatically eligible, and that is not so.
Oh, right. No, that is not so. And we have, and that is, they are presumed eligible, but they still have to go through the tribal vocational rehabilitation process. It's not an automatic. And in some cases, you may have to send an individual for outside evaluation if you're not able to determine eligibility based on the severity of a disability. That's always something that needs to be considered. I'd like to throw out a question. I was talking with Tom Uno, who is, he has a really long title, so I'll just say he oversees all aspects of the our project. But he puts out a really good question here. What are the incentives when applying for VR services? If someone is on SSI or SSDI, are potential consumers afraid to lose benefits if they find employment? I know that this was a big one for us when I was the director of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribal Vocational Rehabilitation Program. And I'd like to hear some people with some ideas out there.
I'll just, to go back a little bit earlier in the thread, and I think these two are related, but it says Dodie McKenzie is posting as Michael Heron 2.
Okay.
Not sure why. And Dodie, we're not sure why either, but I believe this is Dodie commenting under the name Michael Heron 2 saying, I have a form letter that covers those questions that I personalize to the consumer and
Good.
send to the medical providers. We also have access to the tribe's medical records through ROIs.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Dodie. Appreciate that.
Dropping down in the thread, Julie Jefferson says, hi, Suzanne. With SSI, SSDI clients, we contact the benefits officer in our state to find out their benefits and hopefully get information more quickly about their disability.
Excellent. Good. These are good best practices we're sharing. This is wonderful. This is exactly what this is about today. It's about you as the experts. And we're just facilitating so that you can chat with one another and share your best practices. How are we doing, John? Any other good things out there?
Well, we have some people typing. And we'll
Okay.
wait for those to come up.
Okay.
All right. Donna posts, I have learned through the years that you really should find out why they are on SSI, SSDI from that federal entity. A lot of our applicants are not really sure when we ask them, and then the limitations are what we need to know. It is not safe to put an epileptic on a ladder with power tools, etc.
Exactly. Or have them a driver.
And then Shelley posts, with SSI, SSDI, we work with MSC coordinators and do benefit management. We don't want to cause harm. It's all about how our consumers benefit, sometimes just part-time.
Yes, and that's a very good to do that. Doesn't have to be full-time employment. It can be part-time, and it's very effective. These are wonderful. And I'm so happy that they're going to be. What you're sharing right now is being documented. It will be archived, and it demonstrates all of the good work that you are doing out there in Indian country and in Alaska. Yes.
Donna says, many people come in with a ticket to work, but Jimmy Warren had worked for a while on this for AIVRS, and it didn't turn out.
Yes. Actually, when I was doing research yesterday, looking at all of this, that was going to be one of the questions. Is anyone working on the ticket to work? I haven't heard anything about ticket to work for so long. It's like it never existed. I remember that when we were all given the opportunity, there were only a few who became, help me with the terminology, it's been a while. There are only a few that became vendors. I'm going to use that word loosely. That's not the correct word, but I remember that Rebecca Holland from the Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico, she was one of the first that signed up.
I believe this is Dodie again. She says network providers.
Network providers. Thank you, Dodie. Bless your heart. Appreciate that. Is anyone doing the ticket to work? Has anyone ever had anyone come in with a ticket? Is anybody going to any meetings? Is your state involved with ticket? And if you're on the State Independent Living Council or the State Rehabilitation Council, is this something, or do you have meetings with your vocational rehabilitation centers in the state? Yes, John.
Donna says, as Jimmy had relayed to us, he said it's not a good idea.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. We have to be careful of that kind of language now. We're with the Department of Education, and the WIOA is a part of the there's a linkage there. There's a marriage there because of the WIOA and what we need to partner with. So we really need to make sure that we have RSA's blessing on the comment that we shouldn't be doing it. When Jimmy made that comment, it was years ago. There may be some changes, and that would be something that we really have to look at very closely. So I do not want to discourage anyone from attempting to do it or research it or find out if it would benefit your program. Each program is in a different area. There might be a program that's closer to an urban area that may benefit from it, whereas somebody in a very remote or rural area might not be able to benefit from it. But again, this is something that we will have to research and provide you an answer from RSA and not from something that was done many years ago. But thank you for that, because it really it's helpful to have the history, and it's helpful then to also examine what are we doing today, and we need to keep that in mind.
Deidre says, in Washington, they're using Ticket to Work, and there are local representatives that can work with our clients. And Dodie says, yes, state of Oregon is an automatic vendor for Ticket to Work.
Okay, well, and that is good to know. Thank you. I'm happy to know that that there is still the Ticket to Work is still alive and that it's being used, because I think the purpose of it was to benefit and put more, like when we don't have the deep pockets in terms of the money, we don't have as deep as the state, and the state doesn't have as deep as the federal, and so whenever we can look to supplement services, then that puts more money in our pocket so we can spend it on another consumer in another capacity.
Kirsten, I'll come right back to your question just to keep us on topic. Donna replies that there are more or less shut us down as network providers, and I've asked Tom Finch, what do we do? And he says they don't know. And Dodie replies, that is a state VR program who Tribal VR may partner with in reference to Ticket to Work.
Say that again, John, for me.
I'm wondering if Dodie is still talking about Ticket to Work. She posts, and she says, yes, that is a state VR program who Tribal VR may partner with. So I think that's
yes,
question.
yes, and therein lies the wonderful. It's not a secret, but the wonderful aspect of tribal vocational rehabilitation. And because you have the opportunity to partner with so many people, you partner with the state VR, you partner with other resources such as the one-stops, and all of these agencies are there to help you provide more services. So we always need to remember that they're there, and if you are, and that's why the Ticket of Work is something that we should look at, since this is part of what's coming out here today, that it looks like something we really need to address, and we really need to find some answers, because it would put more money in your pocket to spend on other consumers. How are we doing, John?
We're doing good. Kirsten, we haven't forgotten you. I'm just going to stay on topic, and it says that's what we are waiting for RSA to get back to us on. This is Donna. And now we have WIOA, and like you said, we now have different and new regs under them.
Yes.
And then Shelley comments, New York has a ticket to work. Our TVR has a MOU with the state.
Oh, excellent. Very good. Those are important, making sure that you have those memorandum of understanding, because that it keeps everybody on track, and it doesn't allow for any misinterpretation of anything.
So I'll go back up in the thread to Kirsten's question.
Okay. Hi, Kirsten. You've been patient. Thank you.
Thank you. And she says, I have a question about medical documentation for eligibility for clients with lifelong disabilities, such as in a wheelchair, deaf, or blind. What type of documentation do we need? The original medical diagnosis or a current diagnosis, or do we need medical documentation for this type of client?
Well, I'm glad we waited for a while for that one. Oh, wow, Kristen, that was a great question. It is a great question. Okay, I don't have it in front of me, so it's I'll try to answer it the best I can, and it might be we might have to do some research on this one. The ideal thing is current. What the more you know about your applicant and hopefully your consumer, the better. What is necessary is you gather the original can help you, because you can find out through the original and doing you can do your own outside, have your own outside evaluation on this individual. But then you can do a comparison to see if there's, and you can find out, is there going to be a progression, and and then that way, when you're able to sit down and write a plan with this individual, you'll have a good idea of history. Typically, this individual will probably take a little bit longer than 60 days to be called eligible for your program, but let's see, I have to move a little bit closer to see if I don't know, it seems like you're referring to multiple disabilities, such as in a wheelchair, deaf and blind, and some things that I would need to know. Does this individual have a service animal? And some of the preliminary questions would be, what is it that you want to do? What is your dream job? What kind of education or training? Would there need to be any kind of special equipment that would help this individual in the field that he or she is choosing? Other than what I've shared, I don't know, Kristen, did you want to write something else so that we can figure out if I've answered part of it, or if we should be looking at, and we probably will want to do more research once I have the question in front of me, where then we're able to address it a little bit in more depth.
Kirsten states that she was just referring to lifelong disabilities.
Lifelong disabilities. Oh, I see. It's not all of those disabilities in one person. Okay. Lifelong disabilities, an impairment that becomes a disability is usually linked with another impairment that creates another disability. And lifelong disabilities is what we look at. If you look at, for instance, diabetes is a progressive disability, and the idea is, or one of the concepts is that it takes an individual that's a diabetic 40 hours a week to take care of their disability. So taking that into consideration, almost everyone that you're working with may be a lifelong. You're not going to be you're not going to be servicing somebody that just broke their leg and is going to have it in a cast and then is going to be healed and be able to go back to work. So what you need to concentrate on and focus on is the here and the now. What can you do right now for this individual? What is this individual asking you? Are they asking to have some training to go into a particular career? And all you need to think about in terms of that is address the today and look at the future through your individual plan of employment. And for some people, they might not have those skills because planning is not something that's inherent in communities that have lived with generational poverty. So think about that individuals today and then plan for tomorrow. And tomorrow can be as long as 1 year, 2 years, 90 days. So I hope that's helped you a little bit.
Yeah, earlier she said you answered it. I needed the current documentation. And then Donna stated, I think they have to do a new assessment with Social Security every 3 years to continue benefits.
Yes.
That's the report I try to secure, like Suzanne said, current. And then Kirsten said, thank you to Donna, and she'll start checking with Social Security.
Good. Good dialogue, good information, good sharing. I hope everybody's applauding. I am. I'm inside jumping up and down. I'm so happy. Yay, folks. You're doing a great job. This is wonderful. So are we getting any other dialogue? Because I posed a question a little while ago about, and I don't know if we even need to worry about it, but what are the incentives when applying for VR services if someone is on SSI or SSDI? Are potential consumers afraid to lose benefits if they find employment? This was a big one for me when I was working in tribal vocational rehabilitation. One of the things that you may want to do, I know with the state of Arizona, we had quarterly meetings with our the state vocational rehabilitation office, the director, and her team. And what came out of that in those last years was there's a research your state for the VR program website for what they call a benefit estimator. The benefit estimator will assist you in determining how work can change benefits. And it really is you can actually open these documents while your consumer is with you, and you can plug in all of their information, and then you would be given an estimated idea about how much money this individual could make without losing any of their benefits. And none of us want to see, we know how expensive health care is when you have a disability. It's not something easy, and it's not something that any of our applicants or consumers want to lose. So this particular practice might be something you want to consider providing your applicant and consumers, so that anytime you can reduce anxiety and fear and promote strength and comfort is a good thing. And we did talk about innovations. We did talk about the ticket to work. So I just wanted to go back to that because of that one piece in terms of finding information out there. John, how are we doing? Do we have anything?
We're doing well. We have about maybe 5 minutes of any content, and then just kind of open it up to the floor after that.
Okay.
Otherwise?
All right, we also, the topic of substance disorder came up, and I reached out for best practices to some of the tribal directors that have been in tribal VR for a long time. And there's some really good information out there. Many of you that were fortunate enough to have any of Dick Corbridge's training, he did write. He does have information on that. And I think that we did cover the fact that an individual cannot be using at the time that they are applying for VR services. If they are using or have just recently surrendered the use of alcohol or drugs, and then they need to be in a program. They need to be hooked with your behavioral health program, and that seems to be really the consensus. But one of the things that Dick Corbridge talks about, he says, for the purpose of Title V, the term individual with a disability does not include an individual who is currently engaging in the illegal use of drugs when a covered entity acts on the basis of such use. One of the things that I wanted to share, welcome, Lee. We missed you. John's been doing a great job sitting in your seat, keeping it kind of warm for you. Okay. We're just going over. We're up to substance disorder, and the best practice for substance disorder is the individual has to be clean and sober. They have to be in a program, and services can be provided. There is much more information of this particular disease, this impairment. So it's substance abuse, then is linked with domestic violence, which is linked with prison, which is linked with all of the social ramifications that may come along with somebody that has this particular disease. If you think of substance disorder and you think of cancer and you parallel them, kind of make a chart, put a line between them, and look at the similarities between cancer and a substance disorder, and you will see many similarities. And one of them is a relapse, and then there's a period of healing and a period of strength. But the cancer, does it ever really go away? Does the substance disorder ever really go away? And it doesn't. I mean, there's always the chance of a relapse, and there's always the fear of a relapse with cancer or a relapse with substance disorder. I would recommend you use the word disorder. I don't know if it's, I don't know, I have no way of knowing what the state or the federal government looks at in terms of how you're using it. But disorder then places this particular disability in the right field. It's no longer abuse. It is a disorder. It is not something somebody they can't change it.
Earlier, James said, so substance disorder then
I don't
cannot
understand.
How is the DSM
by itself as a
is it
disability
for,
to
or
make
is it
someone
in
eligible?
addition to the VR programs?
Just ask it out. Let John go first and then ask the question.
James Allen says, so substance disorder then cannot stand by itself as a disability to make someone eligible for VR services. It must be accompanied with another disability. And then lastly, Donna said, very good.
Okay. And what was the gentleman's name? I'm sorry. James, no, it can stand alone. Here's the thing. You cannot provide services if somebody is still using. So you have to go through the process. And the process is this individual must be clean for, and you determine that, 3 months, 6 months. They can be in your program in a situation where they are not provided any services, any money services. But if you have a get-together with your consumers in any capacity, or you want to, that individual can come in for counseling, VR counseling. But before that person can be eligible for your program, they have to be clean for 3 or 6 months. They have to be in a program. They have to be with behavioral health, and you have to have great communication between behavioral health and your program. Once an individual has completed all of the obligations in terms of the 3 month or 6 month, whichever you're making it, that they must be clean and sober, then they have to be tracked. And that again is with the behavioral health. And we had something where we had a paper that we had these where if an individual did have a relapse, and then they were suspended from the VR program, and we actually, that's placed in documentation so that there isn't any misunderstanding in terms of you will be continued to receive services, or at the time when on-the-job training situations were used and that sort of thing, a person would not be in any kind, they can't be in an employment situation. Whether it's an on-the-job training situation or whether they are placed in a job, then you would have to have a hold if they were placed in a job and had a relapse. But it can stand alone. It generally doesn't stand alone. Sometimes a person may have acquired diabetes over time. That was one of them. And then the other thing is the co-occurring disorder, which is a lot of times people are self-medicating because they have schizophrenia or they're bipolar, and and they have and so they're self-medicating and using street drugs and alcohol instead of being a part of and going for the mental support that would help them through this part of their life. Lee has a question here, and
I have a question to the audience out there. How are the tribal VR programs using the DSM-4 or a new version that psychologists tend to use? I also have a question regarding any external evaluators that may be referring potential consumers to your program in reference to substance or alcohol abuse. In those situations, how are you following through on those referrals?
some of these questions might have been, what is DSM?
I'm not sure what it's then. It's diagnosis.
I'm not even sure.
Right. They use that to it's categories of disabilities or it varies.
We have some
Okay.
answers.
Okay.
So Donna says it is now DSM-5, and she uses it almost daily. Kirsten stated what it is: Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Mhm.
And Michael Heron says Oregon psychologists seem to be using the DSM-5.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you.
I'm posing that question because if the program directors and or counselors are using that as part of their reference in determining eligibility or planning a service plan for your eligible consumer, that would be one way to verify your eligibility as well as selection of specific services. I'm aware that some programs in some tribal communities do not have that expertise available to them locally, so they will go and purchase from a vendor from a neighboring town to provide that type of service. And I wanted some dialogue regarding, in those instances, is that sufficient enough to determine an applicant eligibility with those two specific presenting problems?
Did we answer, James? James, did I answer your question on can a substance disorder stand alone to be eligible for services?
James says yes.
Good.
And thank you.
And thank you for the question. And I think that we are down to about 5 minutes left, but I'm so enjoying the questions and the dialogue. And again, I think I'm learning more than than I'm providing in terms of research is wonderful, but chatting with the Tribal VR family is like, it's like sunshine when when all you have is clouds. So thank you very much. Really appreciate this.
Donna states all our eligibility experts use DSM-5 diagnosis with recommendations from that manual, and it works fine.
Good.
Great, thank you.
Good. Thank you. Yes. We will be meeting with you again on Friday. I hope that you will all be here on Friday, the same time. Arizona time is it's from 11 to noon, and in each of your areas. John has worked to make it possible so that all of the time zones are listed with the invitation. We will be doing a follow-up. It's a little different format from the community of practice, but not too different, because we really would like a little bit more information from you. At this point on Friday, would you consider those areas? Maybe you could review the PowerPoint, and then after reviewing it, choose something in there that you would like to have more information on. And it might be more information in terms of maybe a whole webinar just devoted to that. This is your opportunity to say, what is it that you're struggling with? For those questions that we still have question marks, the homemaker, I think we've answered the question on drug disorder, but if there is any more information on that or any more questions, please do not hesitate. We might want to look at the ticket to work, since that was brought up in terms of innovations, and there seems to be something I'm wanting to say and I forgot about Friday. Go ahead, John.
There's a couple of comments. Michael Heron says, often someone with a substance disorder who receives a psychological evaluation may also show learning disabilities.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
And then Shelley states, we also use the Disability Handbook. It's a great resource, even gives questions to ask at interview time.
Yes, true.
Michael agrees with the Disability Handbook.
Yes.
And then Donna also says the Disability Handbook is very good, and so is Dick Corbridge's training manual.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Those are all wonderful resources, and we want to be able to access them, and what the goal is that we want everyone to be able to have the same information, and we know that you're in different environments and you're serving different traditional peoples with disabilities, but if we can resolve some of those questions that keep coming back to us over and over again. Some of these questions we've seen many times, and so let's try and see if we can't. Maybe this webinar will be the beginning part of documentation where we can look for answers to our questions that we're having. Don't forget to send us pictures of your community. Send us your website addresses. Lee, what else?
One of the things that I want to remind all of us is there is a continuing need for perhaps our center or another agency can collaborate with us to develop a project director's handbook. That request comes up all the time, so that's a project that we would certainly like to see you partner with us, and that it contains the information that you feel a new director or a new counselor should know about. So food for thought.
Yes. So if we had a policy and procedure handbook and we had a counselor's handbook, that would be great. What about applicants, like a consumer handbook, where when you're sitting down with an applicant, you can provide them the success wheel and a brochure and a handbook so that there aren't any questions. I think we ran out of time.
Yeah, I just want to end with a couple of things. I want to remind that Dodie is the one typing for Michael Heron. I'm just getting confused, but every time Michael Heron 2 shows up, it's Dodie.
Okay. Hi, Dodie. Thank you.
And then Donna states that this pace is much better. Who agrees? And Lena, Kirsten, Shelley, and they all agree. And Lena states on top, lots of great information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I agree. The the community of practice pace is always much more comfortable for both Lee and I, and we're seeing that it's more comfortable for you as well. So that's something that we will work on, and thank you for that feedback.
We look forward to talking with you again on Friday.
Yes, 11 to 12 Arizona time. Goodbye from our little production room here. Thank you, John, and all of your team. Well, your team keeps coming in and out. They're students.
And home of the Lumberjacks.
The home of the Lumberjacks. Ciao, baby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for